So let's have a look at secondary motion here. And for that, I'm gonna start with the cycle of the walk we did previously. And depends obviously on production. Sometimes the secondary motion is handled completely in engine, running some type of like physics and stuff like that. Sometimes in Maya, when we work, we have third-party plugins like Overlapper or Broad Tools that have some really nice secondary motion tools that give us a really nice base based on simulations. And some other times we don't have any of those, so we need to go the old traditional hanky method. And this is what I want to like showcase here. And I had two different approaches. One is when we tackle cycles, so it's more like layer approach for me, similar to when we did the polishing of both cycles. Then once we had to do like a standard shot, how I approach that we'll see later on during the attack. So for the cycle, I'm gonna do one example here with the front cloth, and I'm gonna show how I usually approach this in a way that I find like very handy and very like easy to get, kind of like trying out and testing different options. So for that here we have again, as I said, I want to do a layer approach. So one of the first things I want to do is like keep this on wall, because if you see the back cloth, there's already some popping here because it's following the sharp motion of the hips, so we want to avoid that. So once we have that, the first thing we want to do is setting 3 keys. In this case, because the side-to-side motion is going to be from one side to another side. So once I have this, I'm gonna, in this case, the example I'm gonna show, okay, this is gonna be with the y-axis. So let's come here on the graphite on the white, and I wanna make sure it's always on pre-infinity cycle and post-infinity cycle, because this is gonna be the key part of this type of approach. So let's add some motion here. Let's go maybe around, I don't know, let's round that to 7. And I like to work closely with the graphitor, because when I do this layer approach, I go back and forth with the number to make sure everything looks fine and stuff like that. So we come in here, and what I want to do the effect is, once the right leg swings forward, it's gonna push to the side the cloth, and the other way around once the left leg swings forward. So here we had these 3 keys, and just having like this, as you can see, actually it already kind of works fine. But the good thing about this method is like you can quickly like test out things like, okay, let's try like this, which is kind of like a weird reverse motion, so we don't do that. Actually, I'm gonna probably offset a few frames, something like that. So just with these 2 keys and a bit of offset, we have this really nice initial pass. And one of the things, although I'm not very fan of weighted tangents, but for trying out things is really good in this case, especially for example if we want to force a bit more the hold in here, for the easy in and easy out. As you can see, just with a few clicks we can play around, and it's really nice to prototype and experiment a bit with that. And once we have this, we can do the same with the other axis. We do the Y, then we move into the Z, and then we move into the X. And at the end, you want to have this kind of like nice overlap, offset between axes. But yeah, once we have this pass on the first controller, we can move into the next one. What I'm gonna do actually is like select all of them, and I'm gonna do the same. Key on everything, move into the Y. By the way, if you select in channels, sync selection in Graphitor, if you click in one axis, it's gonna filter into that. And I'm gonna start adding, the same, no, that was 7, not -7. The same amount, and I'll explain later that how we're gonna like play a bit around with that. Obviously making sure it's cycled. And one of the things I wanted to mention as well before we move into the next ones is side to side we only need 3 keys, but if we were doing front and back, imagine we want to do some nice front motion here. Let's quickly do that. Here we could not be able to do in this case with only 3 keys, because if we exaggerate this a lot, as you can see, it would be weird, because side to side is only one time to each side, but front and back we have the 2 legs. So in this case, what you can do is select everything, and then we bring everything back to 16, and this should be 8. Perfect. So that way, what we do is like we have front and back for each leg. So you can see here this. So it would be completely the same approach, but we had to keep in mind that because it's 2 cycles, I mean forward and backwards twice, we need to like either reduce this as we did or add more keys. Anyway, once we have this, we can move into the other controllers, and what we want to do is here is gonna explain a bit of the offset thing. So this one is the main controller. What we want to do is kind of like, as a rule of thumb, once you are transitioning from one pose to another, you know, so from A, which is this one, to B, is when you want to happen the nice offsetting here, you know. So something like that, you know, you can try starting in the middle. This is a good result, but in this case, because it's a cloth and you want some way that I want to do that progressively, so I'm gonna start maybe here, around 5-6 frames, and then you can see there's already like a nice dragging overlapping here. Boom, you know, it goes there and then it goes back, and then we do the same with the other two. So in here, and we add again 5-6 frames, and then we pick the last one and we add another 5-6 frames. So now if you pick everything, as you can see, we have this really nice flow in here, and this is gonna give us a really nice base. And the good thing about this method is like we can let me actually spread this one more frame. We can play around super easy and quickly, like, okay, let's remove 1 frame on each, or let's add 1 frame on each. And also another thing I really like to apply when doing this type of things, because it's a chain, usually the first controller is the one that is a bit more subtle, more contained, and the farther you go into the chain, progressively you wanna go like more exaggerated, you know, because of the momentum it creates. So what we can do is select everything and slowly, you know, start increasing everything. Something like that. And as you can see here, it gives us like a really nice base, and you can like obviously play literally with the scale and go super crazy like this. If you want to like very floaty, you know, keep it more rigid if it's something more like leather and stuff like that. But as you can see, with a few keys, you know, and of setting around playing with the graph editor, this gives us like a really nice starting point, and the results are pretty decent, you know, for like, you know, having to do hanky. And this way I don't have to worry about, oh, I'm gonna have to create this pose and then this pose. This is more, I feel, more organic way to approach things. So once we have the cloth, imagine we are all done, then the other thing we wanted to approach is the plates and stuff. So for the plates, I usually follow a more like a straight ahead approach, in the way that I select keys, you know, and then I find the things where I feel like we need to do things. First here, for example, we have the oops, we have this clipping, so we can play a bit around. It's like, okay, maybe something like this, and just with 2 keys we have this type of like a more clean motion. We can as well add some detail. For example, when it swings forward, you can bring this close, and then when it drops, boom, here we open a bit the leg, you know, something like this. And as you can see, this gives us a bit of extra texture into the animation, which is always nice to have, you know. If you have some kind of tools that create some jitter and stuff, is good. If not, this way to add a bit of like texture and extra motion is always nice. And another thing I like to do is use layers a lot with this. So for example, if we have this here and we want to add some kind of like jitter once it lands, we can come in here, set a layer, and it's like, okay, let's go into the rotation. So we come in here, it's like, okay, we open this, then we close, open and close, something like this. And as you can see, boom, we add a bit of jitter. Boom. And you can say, okay, maybe it's too much, but the good thing about layers is like you can mute and unmute, or you can play with the weight. So it's like, okay, maybe something like this. just a tiny bit. And this way is really nice, clean and non-destructive way, because if you don't like, you can just mute, you can delete, but the way we don't like mess up too much with the original animation. So as you can see here, it's just a few keys and we keep the curves pretty nice and clean. So this is how I like to approach when it comes to cycle and more layer, and now we're gonna see how I approach when it comes to like a standard shot. So we're gonna look into that for the attack animation. I have here the attack animation, and in this type of shots, what I like to do is think of a way that we enhance, you know, we support the overall silhouette and the visual language we're trying to approach with the character. So I usually here I do like almost like a standard approach, more like a blocking plus and stuff like that. So I like to find the key poses and start posing the character nicely, like in here. For example, here then is on the ground here, which is nice, and then it's like, okay, key poses, we had the stretch. So here I try to find something that enhance this and support this shape. So the cape goes back, same with the front cloth. We had this really nice shape, and then when it comes to this type of shot, it's usually when we have the extremes in up and downs, when we have the big change of shapes of the secondary motion. So here, as you can see, once we go down, because the acceleration is when we want to have this really nice reverse shape that we're gonna have as well on the side, on the back of the cape. Is any opportunity is a good opportunity to exaggerate that and give a really nice feel, especially if we're doing kind of like a stylized animation. It's gonna be a perfect opportunity to add more texture to it. And then another opportunity that I like to use that a lot is, for example, here. So as you can see here, we keep the character kind of like still for a while. So this is a great opportunity to add a bit of motion with the secondary dynamic. So as you can see, there's still some drag that comes from here, and then it swings forward. So it kind of like follows the swings of the, we had these really nice swings that go like this. So the cloth almost follow the same direction, but offset a few bunch of frames. Boom. And then it settles. And again, when it comes back, we use this, the same, the front cloth, the back cloth, to kind of like enhance this type of like line of action that we have here with the character. So once we had that, you know, like a key pose, what I like to do is first start working on both the more subtleties and also on the offset, you know, between keys. So seeing as we play with the offset, when it comes to the cycle, here is important to think about that as a chain. For example, here when it's taking off, here is completely on the ground. So that part is gonna be in contact until the very last minute. So we want to make sure when it raises the front cloth that it feels it's coming from this position, so it feels connected, you know, with this base that we had in here, as you can see here. So it's not, we don't want all of a sudden to start like swinging to one side or the other, because that would be like too much of a change of shape. It will lose, because here we want to find the balance of exaggerate to make it cool, but also to feel quite like real, you know. It's clothed, so it has to behave like that. And another thing I like to do a lot is use opportunities like here, for example, to add a bit of a small motion, like here how I raise a bit, you know, the side clothes, or here as well, you know, tiny bit. Or then, for example, once it raises in here, the arm, use that to open a bit the cloth in here, and then treat it like, you know, it drops, so it goes up, and then it settles the cloth, and you know, you have this really nice effect, boom, that give us that extra bit of polishing in the animation. And one of the things I wanted to mention as well is this is a good opportunity, especially in attacks like that. If you have this amount of frames at the end, you know, you keep a bit more for the moving hold. This is a great opportunity to add that extra bit of like settling with the secondary motions, because the character, the moving hold works fine, but it's a good time to kind of like allow all the piece of clothing, armor, and stat to kind of settle and finish the animation, so we don't rush it, you know. So it's good because it makes the character still feel alive, although it's pretty much they're like quite rigid, but that extra tiny bit on the front and the back clothing, a bit of on the elbows and the shoulder pad on the staff, it gives us so much texture that is gonna be really nice to add this extra 10%, especially if we have a character that has a lot of like stuff like this one. Another thing I wanted to mention as well is I really like, if you wanna go a bit more into detail, is to set locators, for example, at the tip in here, or in this one, since we did with the sword, you know, I like to do that on the clothing as well pieces, because that is gonna allow us first on the cycle to have a really nice cycle, because I don't know, the works that we were analyzing before, you know, you could check the front cloth and you want a really nice, you know, aid like that, so it's almost following the hip, you know, and you want this really nice arc, clean curve. You don't want like some jitter and stuff in the spacing. And here is the same, especially if you're gonna animate, like in this case, towards the camera, it's a good opportunity to track the arcs and make sure the spacing, you know, when it goes up, you know, it moves nicely, you know, the cape and stuff. And also there's like a really clean arcs, and that always gonna make the animation to look better and feel better. So it's one of the things I wanted to mention. And last as well, usually when working in production, you want obviously to make things working fine in 360, but in this case, this is a shot for your reel, so we're gonna have to animate it towards a camera. So we can use this in our advantage, and what we can do is like enhance a bit the performance of the secondary motion towards the camera. So for example, here we want to make sure to maybe raise this a tiny bit more, so the silhouette, you know, and the negative space looks better. Same in here, you know, we leave a bit more space in here, because maybe if we simulate and it's fine, it's gonna be more closer to the leg like this, but here we can use these few frames to have this really nice, you know, line of action. And again, even the arcs, you can clean them so it looks this type of curve that we do here with them. If we track the tip of the cape, we make sure towards the camera the arc looks very nice and very clean, and that's gonna give us that extra, you know, edge that is gonna look super good. But yeah, once we had this, we're gonna show how is the result, you know, the 3 animations with the secondary motion. So the tag, as you can see here, I think was quite decent. You know, we try to play a bit with the shapes and make it like look as nice as possible. And then we will have the 2 cycles, which is this one in here, which is the work cycle. And I did the same method as I used for the front cloth. For the side one, the back one, the hair, at the end of the day, it's the same approach for all of them. It's just like, you know, matter of patience and go one by one to make sure they all flow nicely. As you can see, one of the things I wanted to mention is if you're working, for example, on an isometric type of game, it's a good opportunity to actually exaggerate maybe a bit more, like this the back one, so that way when you walk and you move the character, it's gonna be more noticeable, you know. But yeah, as you can see, try obviously to avoid clipping as well with layers. I'm working on that and add a bit of flare. So that would be the walk, and then we have the run animation, which is this one, which is same approach. Obviously the big difference is way faster. So as you can see, especially in the back part of the back cloth, you know, is when we're gonna feel more, you know, that fast type of motion, you know. So it's gonna be it's gonna be more noticeable, you know, the up and down, the change of shape and stuff. But yeah, I think something like that will look quite decent, and as you can see, add a lot of extra layers, and it makes the animation looks a bit more polished. With this, we can like wrap up this chapter and be ready to move into the next one.